Hello and welcome to Pixelfield podcast, where we talk about design, tech and innovation. I'm your today's host, Dominik. I have the pleasure today to have Marek Háša in the podcast, who is a behavioral consultant in Pixelfield. Marek also teaches Persuasive Communication at the University of Amsterdam. Hello Marek, good to have you here on the podcast again.
Hi Dominik, how are you today?
I'm good, I'm alright. I'm enjoying the weather. Well, not right now, but currently it's Sunday, 2 p.m. in London, as you are aware, but our listeners maybe not. And it's super sunny in here, it's super warm. I'm really looking forward to go outside soon.
How many days like this do you actually get in London during the summer?
That's a good question. I think like more than people expect, usually. Because everybody is like, oh, it must like rain all the time. And it's not raining all the time. It's actually good. Like I would say I've experienced like more warm, sunny days here over the last 3 years than those nasty ones.
Yeah, well, I have very similar feelings about the Netherlands, actually. I think it's just overly demonized, the Dutch weather, you know, but sometimes you can also get really beautiful days in those countries as well. But yeah, I'm in Prague now, so the weather is mostly good here, leaving in a few hours. But before that, I reserved some time for this interesting topic of ours.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, actually. Today we're going to talk about social robots and artificial intelligence, maybe in general, but especially social robots, which is an interesting topic for me and something that I've sort of experienced. I don't want to say experienced, but I had like interesting encounter recently in Barbican. I went to an exhibition to Barbican. That's like a cultural center here and like a gallery. It's much more than that. It's like a big estate. If you don't know Barbican, you have to look it up. It's a really cool place in London. Like a big estate from 60s, 70s that has been turned into like really great living space, but also loads of galleries, cinema and everything.
Oh, where is that? Where exactly is it located?
It's like a bit west of Shoreditch, close to Farringdon, I would say.
Okay.
Moorgate, that area. So basically East Central London.
Yeah, quite central.
Yeah.
All right, what was it about?
So I went to exhibition about artificial intelligence, and they had like the whole history of artificial intelligence, old like robots and stuff in there. And one of the things that really, really caught my attention was there was a Aibo. I don't know if you know that. It's the robot dog that you can buy from Sony. It's already there, like I think second or third iteration. They've been developing it for last like 30 years or something.
Okay.
And there has been the newest one. I think it costs like £3,000 or something. Like everybody can buy it. Its main focus is it's supposed to be a companion to elderly homes and for people who like can't have or like dog or for whatever reason. And basically they implemented artificial intelligence into this like dog-like robot that's made. He's really cute and everything. He's very flexible. He can move obviously slower than actual dog, but his movements are really like the ones of a dog. He can like roll on his back and you can basically pet him and if you scratch him behind his ear, he's going to react actually to where you're scratching him. He reacts to your voice, to how you speak to him. You can play with him. You can also teach him things like sit and fetch and all the like typical commands and it's been like quite interesting. And since that, I think my interest for social robots has grown like really a lot. I mean, this is not probably a typical case of social robot, right? Because when you talk to Aibo, he doesn't respond to you in a human way. You can't have a conversation with him. But still, I think
it's still a conversation, of course.
It is, and it's really funny because he responds differently to different emotions. Like you can pet him and be nice to him, but you can also be like bad to him, and he responds to that with like actual fear and everything.
And can he learn over time?
Yeah. It's probably faster than with actual dog, but he still learns over time. When we went to exhibition. They basically wanted to show us how he can like fetch the ball and everything, which they taught him to do it before. But during the exhibition, because there has been like so many new kind of things for him, so many like voices and new visual things, he basically refused to do that, and they would have to like teach him again in that like environment sort of, because he like reacts differently to different people. At least that's what I've been told. I don't actually know if it works like that or not, but that's what I've been told in there, because they couldn't get him to fetch a ball or things like that. But he has some capabilities like that. I don't know how much of like how, because he has some cameras inside and microphones and everything. I believe he's not connected to like internet or anything like that, as far as I know. So he doesn't send it to like Siri does, for example, on iPhone, right?
Yeah.
Where when you talk to her, it gets sent to, not actually with Siri, I think. Do you know more about this? I think actually Siri is the only one from the voice assistants that doesn't send.
It doesn't? Oh,
all the data. Or it sends, I think, some of it, but I think it can't be linked to you, because everything Siri does to help you, I think, is like done sort of locally or something like that. I don't really know. Do you know more about it?
No, we should ask Philip, because Philip is a voice assistant guy.
Really?
Maybe we can ask him during the next podcast episode.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a user of voice assistants. For some reason, I find it a bit creepy.
I'm the same. I don't have any of them. I don't have it on my phone. I don't have anything at home.
Yeah.
We actually talked about it in one episode with Philip, but he didn't mention that he's a voice assistant guy.
Yeah.
So that's something new I learned about him.
Well, he's a busy man, you know. You have to save time.
True.
But anyway, about the pet robots, I think it's actually a very common example of a social robot. So we, at University of Amsterdam, during my master's, we had a few sessions with guys from the research department, and they are focusing a lot on social robots and the interactions with humans. And they brought over a couple of examples of robots, and many of those were basically robots intended for robotic kinesiotherapy. And some of them didn't have the looks of a dog or anything. They were like a dinosaur or like a made-up creature, but they were pretty much acting as a dog. And their purpose was to serve as healing pet robots for people in hospitals, basically. But I can totally see the use for the elderly as well. When I was during my research and thinking about this topic, I also remembered the example of Alice, which is also a companion for the elderly, but it's a very different example in the sense that it has a very humanoid looks, you know, like it has sort of like a baby face of a little girl, but her role rests more in proper conversation. She is asking a lot of questions to the elderly, and kind of encourages them to talk a lot, which a lot of the elderly enjoy very much. I don't know if you'd agree, but I know that, for example, my grandfather would greatly appreciate having Alice at home, asking him a lot of questions about his past and children and grandchildren, you know. So I think actually the elderly and healthcare, those are social care and healthcare. Those are the two main areas where social robots are currently used. I don't know if you can recall an example from a different field, which is not related to.
Not entirely sure, but I have another example from the elderly care field, which is Matilda, which I think came before Alice.
I love the names, by the way.
Yeah, me too. I'm sure they must have done some like studies on like names that do have like a very positive response or something like that, because they are wonderful. So Matilda looks much less like a human. It's more like it is a robot. It looks a bit like R2D2, I would say, but its purpose is exactly the same as that of Alice. So that's one example I've encountered and also saw it in person, but I did not unfortunately interact with it. From like other fields, like I don't know anything specific that is out there yet, but I think the potential is definitely huge. I've been just having a chat recently with my friend Abby. This is shout out to him. I hope he's listening to our podcast. And we were talking about like voice assistants, basically, the next iteration of those, which might be actually social robots in some sort of. And he had like a really interesting ideas around that we discussed. For example, suicide prevention, right? Mm-hmm. Which like sparks so many questions around ethics and everything. Like, for example, if you would call like a suicide hotline and you had a robot in there on the other side that would be available to you like 24/7, but should you know it's a robot or not in that case, right? It's like interesting. The possibilities are so big. Like obviously we are not there yet with I think with this. I think that's the reason why the social robots of today, even though they mimic humans, they still are clearly robots and they are sold as robots and everything, because we are not there yet technologically. But when we get to that point where the neural networks are going to be so powerful and complex that they would actually provide like an instant, very, very human-like reaction.
Yeah.
Like, should we actually make them so human-like, or should we keep them distinguished as things?
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. So I think the main driver of developing social robots further and spreading them in healthcare and social care is obviously the lack of social care workers and healthcare staff, which is a great problem in many countries. And well, you can read articles with very different opinions on this matter, and some people will tell you that we should make them as human as possible and use them in all the different roles and fields that they can be helpful in. Mm-hmm. Other people would argue that you should focus on replacing the most dull and repetitive tasks of social and healthcare workers, so that they can actually spend more of their time on the tasks that really require that human approach, and the real human conversation.
Yeah.
So maybe for like a daily, entertainment and some companionship, you can use a social robot. But I think so. What with a pet robot or with Alice, the humanoid, even though she has kind of like a human-like face, you can still, of course, by like 100 meters, you can tell that it's not a person.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we should go beyond that. And I think with the suicide prevention hotline, that's a very good point, because you don't obviously see the face. And with AI voices, the technology has gone so far that you almost cannot tell if it's a human voice or not. I guess if it could be really depressing, if you call the suicide prevention hotline and a robot picks it up, and you're looking for some person to care about you, and now you have a robot who doesn't care about you, then.
Well, that's the thing. Like that is it's very rational opinion to say that the robot doesn't care about me, but it is like proven. There has been like loads of research done around that, which I'm going to mention, around like human attachment to robots. Like a typical example that has been here for years is Roomba. Do you know the like small circular vacuum cleaner?
Yeah,
that's the automated vacuum cleaner. There is a research, and I actually know, before even going to the research, I actually know someone who has a Roomba like since like one of the first models, like super old one, and it stopped working. They sent it out to repair shop, and they got back and we're gonna give you like a new model because it's like hard for us to repair this one, but you're still like covered with some care plan or something. So it would be better to get a new one than to try to repair that. Like, are you okay with that? And they actually said no, because they wanted their old Roomba back, because they sort of got used to it, and they named it, which at first I found it like weird, but I found out that many people name their Roombas, and they really like created this attachment to it and saw it as like a pet or like someone in in their home. And I know there has been like loads of research done around that, where people, for example, has admitted that they had given Roomba like a day off when it was a holiday and really interacted with it as with the actual person. And this is a topic that MIT Media Lab, I know, has been like covering quite a lot. And they had like research around basically robots, where they had a couple of tasks that people were to perform with robots. And at the end of the session, they asked those people to like grab a hammer and smash the robot. And no one wanted to do it. Like there has been like so few people that actually were like rational about this and were like, oh, of course, it's just a machine. Like, so I know what you're trying to do. But most of the people were really like, they didn't want to do it. Like another popular example was that the game Portal, right? If you know it from that it's built in like a Half-Life expansion or whatever, or like in the same engine. It's like a game where you have this like robot-like companion that is with you the whole game. And spoiler alert for those who hadn't played Portal, but it's quite old game now. At the end of the game, you basically are supposed to sacrifice that companion so that you can live. That piece of plastic or metal, whatever that is. And actually, majority of players decided to sacrifice themselves than to sacrifice this thing. Yeah. Which even the developers were surprised with that. They didn't like they gave it there as like an option, but they didn't expect everyone to do it, and like most people did it. So I think, yeah, I'm just like thinking about, for example, Asia, right? That has a very different culture than we do in terms of the like feeling of like relationships, I would say, and social life and everything. And I disagree that you would be disappointed if you called somewhere looking for interaction, it would be robot. I think if you would be used to AI and robots from your life, which we are currently, majority of us are not, like including me, I'm definitely not used to talk to robots and AI. I've also spent some time working with AI, so I know what AI actually is, that it's just very complex structure of tasks and response and everything. It's not a personality yet, and I don't even know if it can be. But I can imagine a scenario where I'm sort of groomed into talking with robots and AI, where then actually I might even feel like AI is the one that cares for me, as opposed to maybe some paid human worker. You know what I sort of mean?
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, I don't know. It's a very complex topic, and I feel like I've drifted a bit away from from what we were trying to talk about. But I just feel like, yeah, it's much more complex than to look at this with our today's lenses, I think.
Yeah.
And the Roomba thing and Portal, I think is like a good evidence sort of for it, that maybe it won't be perceived like that in the future. What do you think about that?
Well, me and my fiance, we have this ordinary vacuum cleaner, and we also give it a name. And so it obviously works like that.
What's her name or his name?
Oh, it wasn't very creative. We call her. We call her Roby, because it's Roventa.
Okay.
She's very cute. We love her. It's like so you have the steps in your relationship, and obviously the last step is children, and the step before that is probably a pet, like a dog or a cat, and the step before that is a vacuum cleaner with a name.
Yeah.
So we're currently at that point, moving like forward slowly. I was just today I was watching this strange short documentary on YouTube about a guy who is combining like sex dolls with robotics, and is pushing forward the development in the field of like AI wives and husbands, basically.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting field as well, because we live in the age of VR porn, and now we have very advanced conversational AI technologies, and if you bring this together with like humanoid looks, I don't know, maybe in a few years people will be buying their wives, you know, and then online, like robotic wives, and the technology will not only serve for like extreme cases of loneliness in an elderly home, but also, you know, for regular people who will be just too lazy to find a proper relationship, so they will buy it instead. And maybe over time they will, you know, see no difference between a relationship with a machine and with another human being.
Yeah.
But I guess that really depends on the technological advancements, because only a few years back we wouldn't even imagine this happening. So maybe like, I don't know, 5-10 years and we'll be somewhere totally different.
Yeah, I would like to mention here like a Japanese phenomenon called hikikomori. Do you know that term?
No, I don't.
It's basically, I don't want to say movement because that's probably not the right word for it. But hikikomori, basically, if someone is hikikomori, that means that it's a person who, like, detached from social life, and they live by themselves, and they basically don't fit in society. Loads of them don't have job, or they do have job, but a 100% remotely done job. Some of them still do live with their parents, which is a bit better example, maybe. Well, it depends. Than those that live alone, and basically it's been like a big problem because many people are living and dying like that, and there has been like many cases of people that had died in their apartments, and the neighbors only found out like a month later, where they could like smell the bodies and everything. But the reason I'm bringing it up is that I've heard that, I don't know like that much about this phenomenon, but very often those people are drawn to technology, even though this phenomenon is it's older. There has been people that has been living as hikikomori like 30-40 years ago, attached to TVs and everything. But because now the technology and computers and games and stuff like that is more often, actually sometimes either video games or some kind of like chatbots or something can be actually a way to sort of cure this. I don't want to call it like illness or something, but you can like it. Yeah, basically I can see the potential of technology like bringing those people back to social life on their conditions, because many people who had become hikikomori became that because they feel like they have been pushed and pressured by society to do something. Like it's very typical that it's kids who has been pushed into education and corporate life, and they find out they don't want to do that, but they don't know what else to do, and they just lock themselves completely from outside world. So maybe through like technology and maybe social robots, it can be a thing for a way for them to get that social life back, but on their own terms. Because obviously,
well,
you can.
I think this is of course a specific example from Japan, but I think a similar trend can be also seen in Europe. So I think in Scandinavia, like chronic loneliness is a big thing nowadays, you know, also in remote areas. So I think you got a point there. The only thing that I think is holding this application of social robots back at the moment is just the state of the technology at the moment. Because from what we've heard at my university last year from the researchers who specialize in social robots, if you see, you know, videos with really well advanced dialogues with a social robot, it's always acted and like pre-programmed.
Yeah.
So the technology is not there yet, and you can only have a very basic conversation. Usually the robot is just asking people questions, prompting them to talk about something, and then just like nods or says, okay, yeah, well, okay. Maybe sometimes they remember, like, you know, if the elderly talk about their children, so they memorize the names of the children and say like, so how is Anthony? And that's it. That's the most they can do at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, but I can, I can totally see the potential for the coming years. And also, I think that the loneliness will be getting worse and worse, to be honest.
Yeah.
So,
the question then is, like, if this is the right solution, if it's not just like a patch on something that has completely different cause, and
it's definitely just a patch. I think also in the social care and healthcare fields, I think to a great extent is just an easy fix to a much more complex problem. So without the technology, we could, of course, find different solutions and like bringing more funds to those sectors, attracting more workers. But maybe this is a more attractive solution for our society at the moment. I don't know, because the technology is moving forward so fast, and we believe in it so much that we just, like, at this moment, if you have a societal problem, your first instinct is immediately to find a technological solution. Which is a bit strange, but because often the problems themselves come from the overuse or misuse of technologies, So this way we could easily lock ourselves in a very unhealthy loop of just fixing problems with more technological advancements. And do you think that this application, if we move forward with social robots and they have like a proper conversational AI and they can remember stuff and have a very good build very good relationships with people, do you think that that might bring many more, even more serious troubles for us? For example, so people who are in like Japan who are
robots killing us.
That's precisely what I meant. Yeah. Terminator, basically. I mean, if so, let's stay with the example of people in Japan who locked themselves out from the society. So what do you think will happen if they have like a social robot with whom they can build a proper relationship but still stay at home? Like, will that solve their issue? Will they get back to the society? I don't think so. Maybe they will feel happier, but it's not the solution. It's not the cure. We are tackling. I think with this we will be tackling the symptoms, but not the origins of the not a disease, but the issue.
Yeah, I think this is like a very good point, and maybe the topic that we should be thinking more about in terms of like ethics and everything and the future of social robots is to actually start thinking about integration of those robots into like normal world, the same way as governments are trying to integrate different social groups and everything together. Maybe it is slowly a time to start thinking about robots as a one ethnical or social group or whatever, and how to connect it to the rest of the world. Because you're right. This is like super valid point. If we're just gonna like put robots out there as like a solution, you don't want to talk to people and talk to this and buy, it's definitely not helping anything. I'm still like the way I saw it with Hikikomori's was that the robot is like introduction back to the social life, but obviously my hypothesis was assuming that they do want to get back into normal life in the first place. They just are scared or unable or whatever, and this might help. But in many cases, it's true that they don't see a reason why going back to normal social life, normal in quotes, and having a robot like this, an AI like this, will probably only deepen that feeling, because they will be like, I don't need other people because I can even chat with just my machine. Exactly.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
By the way, do you know that there is a field called robo-philosophy?
No.
Like an academic domain. Yesterday I saw that Aarhus University in Denmark, they have a special department, like a department of robophilosophy, where they only, they blend, philosophy with robotics and AI, basically.
Yeah.
And the two sides meet. So it's very interesting sight to see, that it's a proper field now. Thinking about the ethics of AI and robotic AI, conversational.
Robophilosophy.
Yeah,
that's good. I didn't know the term, so I've learned something new, which is great. Because I knew something like that exists, because I've been following work of Kate Darling. She's actually this scientist, researcher at MIT Media Lab, the one I've used like the examples of. But yeah, robophilosophy, I like that. That's very cool. I think I might go back to university actually.
Yeah, let's go to Denmark.
Yeah.
Well, one topic that I wanted to bring forward is data security concerns.
Yeah.
So if you imagine yourself being a hospital patient who has a chronic disease and has to stay in a hospital for a very long time, and you get assigned a social robot who comes in every other day to entertain you and talk with you about stuff. Can you imagine yourself being confident, like sharing private information with the robot, or maybe even information directly related to your health condition?
Yeah,
because that's very sensitive information,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have talked about something similar in different episode with Philip, where we talk about smart cities, and my personal opinion is that it all depends on the level of transparency that you provide, and there always should be options. Like you should be able to choose how much do you want to share and have like a bit of control with that. Because even with like the medical information, I can imagine a scenario where I'm okay with sharing that, but I would have to know who I'm sharing it with. Like if it's the medical institute and developers of the AI, and I would know who they are and what's their structure and whatever, then I would probably like be more than happy to do so. But yeah, transparency is a big one for me. That drives my decisions to whether to share or not share personal information. And that I'm applying this to everything, to when I'm using a phone, whether that's a iPhone or Google phone or like Android. I'm more likely to say yes to share my data if I get like a good explanation of why am I sharing it and with who. So it's the same for me.
Yeah, because with social robots, people might not even realize that they are also being recorded, because many of the social robots are mimicking human conversation and are scanning your facial expressions and acting accordingly. So where does that data go? Is it stored? Is it deleted instantly after the reaction of the social robot? So I guess this is a point to take into account, also for governmental agencies who are responsible for the regulations.
Yeah.
Because as in any other domain in like the technological developments, we have to be really careful here, I think.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. And this for me has been the reason to start doing this podcast, basically, to raise awareness of some of the topics. Not only directly to consumers, because I'm not naive. I don't think this podcast will become like a hugely popular thing that will reach my grandma organically or something like that. But
you should aim for the stars, Dominik.
Yeah, that's true. But still, even if I stay in like our social bubble and our industry, I think loads of it is our responsibility as designers, consultants, developers, whatever, to basically maintain the right level of that balance of how much do we gather to really ensure that we gather only the information that we need, but also that we are obtaining the necessary like access and agreement of the people being recorded, which is something like that I've been striving to implement, and we've basically with Pixelfield we've been now having talks with many of the clients, and this is like one of our sort of conditions of working with us is that we're just avoiding like dark patterns and that kind of stuff. I'm not saying we do only work that is beneficial for everyone. Obviously, we do commercial work that only purpose is to make money, but still, you can make money in a good way without misusing data, and you can make money with a shady way. And I think it's our responsibility as suppliers to not supply to the shady ones.
Yeah, for sure. And during the design, I think it should be everyone's responsibility in our field to always try to figure out the best mechanism of data collection and data processing, which doesn't require us to hold the data for a long time and store it somewhere where we don't really control it, etc. Ideas keep coming to my head as we speak.
That's good.
And
it's gonna be a long episode, but I like that.
I hope our listeners will stay with us for a bit longer. So I was just thinking that up until now we're only talking about the non-commercial applications of social robots. But I think we should also cover, at least for a bit, the commercial applications and the possibilities, the potential that social robots have in the commercial environment.
Yeah.
Because I haven't really noticed any of that recently, and I don't know if you can recall it, maybe a social robot shopping assistant, or perhaps a robotic receptionist.
Yeah, that is a good question. It's good to mention to our listeners that the way we prepare this podcast is that we always pick a topic and then we prepare in isolation. We don't share ideas with each other because we want to keep it very natural and organic. And when this topic came, I was super excited, but all I was thinking about is the non-commercial use. I can't recall if I know any actual commercial example that is not just a chatbot, because chatbot is obviously something a bit different still than the level of AI and robotics we're talking about here today. I don't know, probably.
But can you imagine, for example, going to IKEA and deciding between different pieces of furniture, and then suddenly a social robot comes, like a shopping assistant, with a humanoid face, and is guiding you on your decision. I think that could be quite useful, and also this particular application could bring very little data security concerns or ethical issues, because there you don't really have any responsibility. You don't collect sensitive data. So why not? Maybe it's just too expensive for a mass use in this environment.
Yeah, probably. Because the question is do you really need a social robot and a really personal shopping assistant, or is a self-checkout enough? And then you have a real human or even internet or whatever to answer your questions.
Yeah, well, so for example, I like your point with the self-checkouts, because that's a big trend, obviously. And now you have, I think near Paddington, there's a, what is it called? VH Smith is the chain of the grocery stores.
Yeah. VH Smith. Yeah.
So they have a shop there with absolutely no human service, I think. And they are testing. You're scanning everything with your phone and paying through your phone.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And there are there's one security guy and that's it. So it's quite interesting. It's near Paddington.
I'll go there. I'll try that out.
Yeah, you should try it out.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting phenomenon if you think about the fact that people are seeking less human interaction when checking out. But I think that they could, at least with like choosing the best furniture for your flat, you could actually, really appreciate like a human contact, some human interaction, some well-meant advice.
That's the thing. Like when you asked me that question, I was thinking about the application in a commerce, where I could really see like having a social robot or even need for that interaction is either very bespoke services or where there is like a very extensive like sales process, basically. Like let's imagine a car dealership or even real estate.
Yeah.
But this is something that is where the empathy is so important aspect of it from so many point of views that I'm not sure if like social robot could replace it, even if I can imagine that the technology advances like so much. Because for example, the real estate, like if I think about that, because I've just been in a process of searching for apartment and stuff. If I saw like there are actual people selling apartments or renting apartments, and then there are some with AI doing that for them, I would always pick the human because I can use the weakness of a human salesman to my advantage, if that makes sense.
That sounds very evil, but
no, it's not evil.
Sure.
I think it's sales, it's business, it's a normal thing. It's always like a game. But with a robot, right? They are perfect. They are in a way you create them, of course. So if, for example, like I tell them that my minimum price is, I don't know, whatever, 1,000, then they won't go below it, no matter what you do. And it just becomes, I don't know, I can't imagine it. That would be like so weird, because then the outcome of the process is sort of, done. But maybe not. Maybe I'm just short-sighted with this one. For our listeners, if you have a different opinion than me on this, please let us know in the comments. I'm really curious about this one. But yes,
or if you come up with an idea for a social robot in the commercial sector, just let us know and we will develop it for you.
Oh yeah, that's a nice plug. I like it. And you tell me I'm an evil salesman. Come on.
Yeah, there we go.
Do you know any like commercial applications?
Of social robots?
Of social robot, yeah.
Not really. I'm only thinking of examples that I would like to be around. But so I think also with like receptionists, sometimes they have a lot to cover, like human receptionists. But for the basic interaction, like when you're picking up your keys in a hotel, or something, you're kind of expecting to have a human-like conversation, but not necessarily with a human.
Yeah.
So I can easily imagine a very, representative social robot talking to me and handing me the card for the room.
Yeah. I would like that, because this brings me back to my friend Abby. Second shout out to him in this episode, who believes a lot in like a future of different interfaces than we currently have, and most of all the voice enabled interfaces. And I have to like agree with that, because even the reception of a hotel, like obviously you can have like some kiosk in there that would you would interact with it with a touch screen, but that is so cold and unpersonal and clunky, and you would have to know where to click, and you would have to really well design it. But if you would have a voice there, and I can imagine in this case it would be some very human-like robot, then it makes the whole experience so different, so more natural, and I would love that. Yeah.
And also with like governmental organizations and their offices, if you have to apply for a new ID or something, most of the interactions with the governmental staff is really frustrating, at least in the Czech Republic. Most of the time the people just hate their jobs, and I think that's partially because they are doing a lot of unpleasant repetitive stuff. They are forced to solve a lot of troubles with people who are angry because they are missing out on something and they need the ID or something fixed as soon as possible. So they are angry and they are transmitting that anger to the workers. And I think that could very well be avoided again with the use of social robots, at least for some cases. And if the social robot couldn't solve that particular problem, you could be directed to another line with a proper representative of the agency.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, you've basically touched upon a much larger topic, which I think economy is talking about for ages. I don't remember who was the very big economist of last century. I believe it was last century. It must be around 100 years ago or so, when he basically predicted that we're going to work much less in the future. But the reasoning that he gave was that we will find ways how to automate tasks that are repetitive and dull and boring. So we will spend less time working more creative, intellectual kind of jobs, basically. And he said that I don't remember his name. I don't know who that was. It was some big economist, and he said that in a pre-computer era, or maybe very early computer era. And yet, I think social robots can be one big way to solve this and get to this point. Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you very much, Marek, for doing this episode with me today. It's been your second episode in a row, so you're becoming a regular full-time co-host.
My pleasure.
Good.
As always. Yeah.
Well, a safe journey back to Amsterdam.
Thanks.
Enjoy
the afternoon.
Thank you. You enjoy your last minutes or hours in Czech Republic, and I hope we'll speak soon again.
Yeah, looking forward to that. So thanks, and bye to our listeners.
Thank you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're using. And follow us on our social media. On Twitter, we are Hello Pixelfield, and on Instagram, we are @Pixelfield. Thank you, and see you next time.